Thank you.
These minutes are the ones that the city clerk drafted.
I'm fine. Then who's here representing the city clerk for these purposes? I mean, we still have to approve them. I did not take that to be a formal draft. We discussed definitely concept, definitely priority, definitely something to be considered and looked at, goals going forward. But as you know, under our ordinance, and council, correct me if I'm wrong, when the city commission directs the planning commission, then it ends up as an agenda item like parking, mechanical equipment. And that can be mistaken for that. I did not take anything that we did through that meeting to be in that form. So perhaps that needs to be softened a bit.
Directed or discussed.
Well, because it says research and consider. I don't know what they mean by us doing research, independent research of some kind. Not that we're averse to considering anything you send to us. Because this becomes, I know this sounds kind of technical, but this becomes a thing depending upon how that is worded in carrying out the actual intent. I didn't think the planning commission was directed to do anything this specific.
I don't recall specifically on that. I guess the thought, because, this is a planning commission that would be approving the minutes, so even if the city commission has that are in this format, that doesn't mean that the planning commission would have to approve the exact same language. It might make it a little glitchy. I believe the commission approved it at the last meeting.
So these have already been approved.
I believe they did approve them at the last meeting. I have to double check on that. I was sick, so I didn't attend the meeting, but I was remotely. We just did. We could get clarification on that. I think there was discussion on that, but I don't know specifically if it was a direction. As you said, that does make a difference.
Yeah, it does. So I don't know how we fix this. I assume we have to approve minutes at some point in time because it was a formal meeting of our body as well. Without some adjustment there, I'm gonna have trouble.
I think you can postpone it if you want. We could look into that.
Yeah.
Further and get the specific language and bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay,
And if
that
there's
would.
something that needs correction, then we need to do that with the city chief.
Are there other additions or corrections to the minutes? And again, that's one person. I have trouble, others may not. If there's a motion as submitted, that's perfectly acceptable. If we have a motion on these minutes, that's perfectly acceptable as well. Is there consensus to ask that this be deferred to our next meeting?
Yes. Yep.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, if you would, counsel, I would appreciate that. Next item on the agenda, 425 State Street, U.S. Sign Crafters. Is it Zyker? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Zyker Cleaners are here with a request for a special sign approval for a sign greater than 32 square feet, signs, I should say. This was on our December canceled docket, and you've been very patient, waiting to get a chance to come back to see us. We've looked at the packet in your application that was provided to us in advance. But please tell us who you are and what you would like us to consider today.
I'm Steven Tucker. I'm with US Sign Crafters representing Zyker Cleaners. Zyker is taking over this former sanitary cleaners downtown. And plan is to take down the old existing signs and put up a new sign with Zyker's logo and how they brand their building. So we try to make this as close as possible to the old footprint of the sanitary sign. And just the Zyker portion will illuminate, and any kind of electrical connections are going to be hidden behind this black portion of the box. So the black does not illuminate. So we've got 2 Zyker signs and a small Joe Z sign. The Joe Z represents their tailoring division and just a part of their branding that they like to have on other buildings. So happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Yeah, we're gonna have some, hang on a second, clarification from staff. Where is the material in this on the Joe Z sign?
That sign supply.
No, I've got, no, I've got the picture. What are we doing?
Page 26, you can see the Z.
Yeah,
That sign.
I see it. We don't do anything with the Joe Z sign. That's, so when he brings it up, we don't have to do anything on that. So let's,
I just wanted to let you know it was part of the package and want to slip
Yeah.
anything under the rug on you.
okay. I guess questions for our applicant, Ms. Burzak.
So on packet page 21, and you kind of mentioned it, but I would just like a clarification on the black portion of the backer panel.
Yeah, the black
So it-
portion,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so is the black portion also lit or just the white lettering?
just the white lettering. So the tagline, that's actually just vinyl. The word Zyker will illuminate, the black portion's aluminum,
Okay.
painted black, and it works as like a support skeleton frame.
So how large are the letters themselves? Because we have overall dimensioning of the size of the sign.
Yep.
Okay, is it, so they're a
the-
little over 25 inches?
Yeah, the
each?
Z is about as 25.6.
Okay.
Yep.
So my concern, and I actually drove out there at night to look at the channel lettering on the but that's already been removed,
Mhm.
because I wanted to see the illumination of that and how far back. Because since there is residential housing a half a block away.
Yep.
I don't have any issue with the signage that is on South State. But the signage that faces to the south, I was a little concerned that the people in the residential housing, if this entire, because the way it was worded, I assumed it was all lit.
No, it's just the word Zyker and
Not even shirts, dry cleaning and laundry?
nope, that is non-illuminated vinyl. And it's just the face of the letters, so there wouldn't be any ambient lighting. It would light just when you're looking right at it, so.
Okay. So, because I was wondering, hours of operation and in terms of when they close, if really the signage being lit on the residential side was even really necessary, because they're pretty much closing the operation on a daily basis when the lighting would be required. Because I just have a lot of concern with any signage that is near residential
Sure.
housing.
No, if there's anything in the ordinance where it needs to be shut off at a certain time, we can set it up to be like that. Typically we set it up to just be on,
Mhm.
and with LED technology, usually it's not pulling a whole lot of power or
Okay,
excessive
so if
power.
it turned out that, who knows what the channel lighting before, what the amount of illumination it emitted toward the residential units?
Right, it was an old neon sign that was put up in 1965.
Wow.
So it was.
Probably
it was
more?
I know it was pulling more power.
Okay.
Neon pulls is heavy and
Okay,
is,
so you sound like
essentially brighter
you're trying to
almost.
be reasonable to the neighbors, and if it turned out
absolutely.
people complained, you could work something out?
we could,
Okay,
and
'cause-
right in this area, there's Jimmy John's that has a very similar sign, black
Yeah.
backer with white lighting. And it's the same style sign.
Right, so
That'd
Jimmy
be a
John's
good,
being in the downtown, I'm just concerned
Yeah.
that the one side faces south toward a residential housing that's on both sides.
understood. This really should not be overpowering.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
Yep.
I have a question. I'm less concerned about the lighting, but I'm just curious why this wasn't designed at 32 square feet or just under, so you didn't have to have any.
Well, when you
Approval.
take down an old sign like sanitary there, it leaves a lot of damage to that brick. It's almost like when you peel off a Band-Aid. So it is, so the lettering can be read, and we put all of the wording that they want on their signs and how the owner likes their buildings to look. And it fits nicely on over that window area. And again, it's very close to what was there before. Where we're getting a lot of that square footage is the backer. If we were to take the square footage of each individual element, it'd be much lower than that.
Well, right, except we don't, that's not, how we count it. So I'm just curious. Other questions for our applicant? All right, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, comments, discussion, questions?
When I look at sign applications and approvals, I kind of try to consider the impact of the individual application. And part of that is, the size of the sign, the style of the sign, the type of sign, especially the size of the building or the space where the sign or signs are going to be installed. When I look at a channel letter sign like the previous or existing, I see that as less impactful than a fully installed sign as we're seeing in the application. Right, when we see a channel letter sign, even though it can be large, you still mostly see the building and the channel letters are there. With my concern with this application is, today's application is this style of sign is a lot more, to me, imposing on that size of space.
Thank you. Other comments, discussion?
Kristen has a.
Yes,
I do have an error in the packet. I marked on sections 2533(2)C of the sign ordinance. And that has to do with modification. This application does not require any modification. So it's just factors of 2533(1)B for signs, special approval of signs greater than 30.
all right, thank you. Any other comments or discussion? This is not a public hearing. We're not required to hold a public hearing for sign approval. However, we welcome public comment at any time. Is there anyone here that wishes to address this sign application? I'm guessing most everybody else here is for some other items on the agenda, but we want to make sure. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, then what is your pleasure? Do we have a motion?
I will make a motion,
Mr. Ebert,
move to approve the request from U.S. Sign Crafters Incorporated for Zyker Cleaners located at 425 State Street for approval of two wall-mounted internally illuminated wall signs, each greater than 67 square feet in size based on section 25-33(1). Special sign approval for a sign greater than 32 square feet based on the drawings prepared by U.S. Sign Crafters and included in the December 5th, 2024 Planning Commission packet as the request meets the factors found in section 25-33(1)B of the sign ordinance as stated in the findings.
all right, thank you, Mr. Ebert. I have a motion. Do I have support for his motion?
Support.
Mr. Yerrick supports the motion. Is there further discussion on the motion? Yes.
If you could reference what the January 2025, I think this was originally prepared for the summer season.
Ah,
Good catch. I will amend my motion accordingly.
Mr. Yerrick, will you amend your support for the motion? All right, thank you. Any further discussion on the amended motion? Hearing none, the clerk may call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich,
Yes.
Ms. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
No.
Mr. Ebert,
Yes.
Rovak,
Yes.
Chair Hartful.
Yes, By-
Motion is approved.
by an eyelash. As an aside, before I call the next to my fellow commissioners who went through the sign battles, if we're going to approve every sign beyond 32 square feet, maybe we need to go back. Council, we may need to go back. Okay. Next item on the agenda, 420 Anchors Way, LDS Properties LLC, special approval of a sign greater than 32 square feet. Is there somebody here to speak to this? Please know that we have your application. We got that a week in advance, so we've had a chance to review that. So tell us who you are, sir, and what you're asking from us today.
Yes, my name is Chad DJ and I'm here representing LDS Properties LLC for the special approval sign greater than 32 square feet on the Schultz Roofing Supply Building.
All right.
So this is a sign that will be on, we're only replacing one of the two signs on the building. So it's replacing an existing sign on the west side of the building.
Questions for our applicant?
The
Mr. Miller?
Schultz roofing awning remains as it was before?
Correct.
Thank you.
Question.
Mr. Yurick?
So the old sign was 96 square feet and the new sign is 80 square feet?
I believe the old sign was 75 square feet. I thought it was 3 foot by 25 foot. Well, they were letters. It really wasn't a sign. They were individual letters.
That's on package page 37 in the application.
Four by 24.
96, right?
This one is by the. It says.
4 foot by 24 foot. Okay, so it was 4. I was thinking they were 3 foot in my mind, but yes,
So the new sign is small.
correct. But a different size also,
Proportions.
proportions, yes.
Other questions for our applicant?
Will
Ms.
the,
Burzak?
will the sign be lit in any way?
No,
Any other questions for? Thanks, sir. All right, comments, discussion, only first half, public comment. Anyone here to talk about this sign application of 420 Anchors Way? It's not a public hearing, not required to be, but we welcome public comment on any topic. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this? All right, seeing none, no raised hands. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure?
Just like our previous application, right, I consider the size of the building, which is much larger than our previous. This is a very large building. I think the overall impact of this sign is less than what was there before. I think the size and scale of the sign and the lettering is appropriately proportioned to the rest of the building.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Anybody else? Yeah, I agree with you on that. And these are the last application. This is where a sign of this size belongs. And I have no problem supporting this. So ladies and gentlemen, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Miller,
I'll move to approve a request from LDS Properties LLC for special approval of a sign greater than 32 square feet for the building tenant SRS Distribution located at 100 Anchors Way for one wall-mounted, non-illuminated wall sign being 80 square feet in size, 16 feet by 5 feet, based and located on the northeast side of the building facing Anchors Way, based on the drawings provided by LDS Properties LLC and included in the January 2, 2025 Planning Commission packet, as the request meets the factors as found in section 25-33-1B of the sign ordinance as stated in the findings.
I have your motion. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do I have support for his motion?
Support.
Shirk supports the motion. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the clerk may call the roll.
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Eber?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. Burzak?
Yes.
Chair Bartle?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing with regard to the Curious Kids Musician request for a text amendment to section 4.6.3 in table 4.1 and 4.6.4, table 4.2 and section 11.12.22 with regard to our ordinance allowing medium-heavy social institutions as a permitted use in CO districts. We'll open the public hearing. We have at podium, please. We have, of course, your application. We've had a chance to look at your materials. Please tell us who you are and what specifically you're asking from us today, if you would, please.
My name is Lori Marciniak. I'm the Executive Director of the Curious Kids Museum and the Discovery Zone.
It is our intent to purchase the Priscilla U. Burns Center, the former Heritage Museum and Cultural Center, and rework it into becoming a children's museum that requires, or what we would like to do is have operation on the first floor. And I'm told that in the current zoning, we could not do that. So we submitted a application to get that, a variance to that.
All right. Thank you. Kristen, why don't you, for the record, kind of lay out here why they had to come before us? In terms of, I mean, we have extensive materials in terms of the definitions, uses, permitted uses, zoning districts. Maybe you could synthesize that just for the record a little bit as to what required them to come forward here.
So this property is located in the COA Commercial Office District. And when we look at the zoning ordinance, there's different use groups, one being social institutions, which this use falls into. At one time, we thought it fell into something else, but we kind of evolved a little. So in looking at the social institution district, there's two different types of uses, light and then medium heavy. And this use falls more under the medium heavy because of what's going to go on the ground floor. And that use is not allowed on the ground floor in the CO district or in the D district. The applicant, so we explained that to the applicant, said to move forward, we believe the best route would be to amend the zoning ordinance to allow the medium heavy uses to be in the CO district, similar to the C commercial business district where they're allowed right now today. The D district would remain the same, but not allowed on the ground floor.
All right. First of all, questions for our applicant, Mr. Everett?
More a question for staff.
Yeah.
What's the drawback to doing nothing? The existing use in the space is the exact same use.
When we first started looking at this, a lot of the previous city manager kind of alluded to that the original use was for banquet facilities. They're not a banquet hall anymore. They want to use it as a museum facility. While there was some museum use to it, this is predominantly all museum or children entertainment. I guess might be another use. Doesn't fall under indoor entertainment because of the way it's owned as a nonprofit.
So we're saying that the Heritage Center as it stands right now is not heavy social, but in heavy social, assembly is one of those uses. So to me, it's not a change in use. By going down any road, I'm afraid that as soon as this happens, now all of a sudden parking becomes the issue because there is no parking.
Parking is not associated. So in the zoning ordinance in chapter 18, there's provisions if you have a non-conforming use and you change the use, you calculate parking under the previous use. So let's say it comes out to they were supposed to have 50 spaces under the previous use. And that's just a number. The new use, let's say, comes in and says they need 49 spaces. It's a wash, it's even. Parking's reviewed on a different level and when you look at the amount of space they're using and how they're using it versus how the parking calculations were for the banquet facility, they have less usable, the usable area changes and how the calculation changes. The formula being used is different. So their parking should be fine.
Not following
Because
that.
they have more space that's probably not used for the public.
Yeah, there is no parking.
Right, there is no parking, and I do believe Lori can probably talk a little about parking if that is one of your concerns. But it's not really part of the.
So again, what's the drawback to doing nothing?
It's not, it wouldn't be allowed on the ground floor.
Wait,
It's allowed right now on the ground floor.
wait, let me follow. How would you classify the Heritage Center as we knew it? Where would it fall under your definitions here? This is to Mr. Everett's point. What would you call it?
It was considered more of a banquet facility.
Well, there's no more of it. I mean,
Ground floor. That's what it was being used for. You know, we looked through the property files and there's really no clear how it got to where it got to.
Yeah, I have to go back and look at my notes. The property was originally church
Way back, yeah.
There was a fire, it was rebuilt.
Correct.
As, museum. Banquet facilities were part of what the prior church used to use the building for.
As many churches
as many churches
do.
And I think the churches thought that actually moved out, and they were doing things like that.
Mhm.
The fire occurred, the building was rebuilt, that was what Heritage Museum, Cultural Center. The banquet use continues. There was no clear indication of how that was ever looked at. The zoning ordinance was different at that time. But it was very difficult to, it was allowed, we just weren't, it wasn't really clear from the records how that was determined there. It was apparently a conforming use at that time because there was no indication that ever came, for a special use permit. Which would have been the only other way for it to come, so it was treated as use at that time. The ordinance has changed, and now the social institution would not be allowed to be on the floor of that. So it wouldn't qualify as continuing and non-conforming use because the use is an extent, it would be an extended change in the use under the non-conforming use ordinance that would not be allowed. Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
My head is swimming.
A
little bit.
It was an increase in consumption, change in operations, including change in hours, necessity, that type of thing, the non-conformity increase of people you'd be allowed under that provision. So this, again, it's a social institution, it would be allowed, not the main floor, it would be allowed on the second floor level, but to allow the social institution to continue, the only way it would be allowed here now, this use would be for changing the zone.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's hard sometimes to track, trying to figure out what was allowed at that time, but it was very clear that there was never anything that was or granted for the garbage at that time. And it was a very different, it seems to have been treated as more of an office unit than look at the ordinance. I don't, it's difficult to.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Ms. Burzak.
Of staff, this is a question for staff. When I reviewed this, my immediate question was, why isn't social not allowed on the first floor in the CO and the D district? There are many municipalities that have children's museums and things right in the downtown. And walkability being, so important, and the vibrance of having something like that that people might want to go into in that area. I was wondering why social is lumped in with office. I understand maybe in the downtown area why you don't want office on the first floor, but a museum type, Fenville, for instance, had a children's museum right in their downtown.
We have one right in our downtown.
Well, there we go. So I'm just kind of wondering, as soon as I read this, I'm kind of like, why would we want to, limit that type of use in our downtown or in somewhere that we're trying to, we want walkability. We want our community to have that aspect and to have people and it be vibrant and everything. Why would we want to discourage that from a first floor use? And so I personally wrote, please break out social and allow it on the first floor from office instead of having them lumped together as both of them not being allowed on the first floor in both those districts. So that to me seems to be, I don't understand why we wouldn't want that type of use and why we ever decided it wasn't an appropriate use in those districts. So that's just me.
Well, I'll follow up then on the flip side, which we try to do. We have to look at other structures in the same zoning district besides the Heritage Center. And what does that mean for looking at the entire zoning district? Because this would then be allowed everywhere within the district, correct?
I think the downtown district is very different from commercial office as far as the goals of zoning. And again, ordinances change over time, and I think at one point in time, and looking back at some of the documentation and the other ordinance changes that the planning commission has made for commercial office space just isn't as in demand as it was at one point in time. I think that changed a lot, especially probably in the last 5 years, so.
Yeah.
Well, all right, so assume that this goes forward, that this is apparently, all these minds can come up with no other way to accomplish this other than this. Go back to Mr. Abbott's original point. What happens with parking? What will be the parking requirement in that structure for a Curious Kids Museum? I assume you're maintaining both entities? This will be a second entity, or are you moving all your operations to the Heritage Center?
We will maintain all 3 locations,
Okay.
the Curious Kids Discovery
we have a-
Zone, yes.
So what will be their parking requirement?
So we're gonna look at parking based on the usable square footage of the building with their proposed plans. We're gonna compare it to what was there before under the parking requirements of that business. And we have it clearly documented what the occupancy load was of the previous tenant. I believe Lori can speak to what they're looking at doing to help address the parking issue. If it's a wash, it's a wash. It doesn't. Do you want
We,
to explain?
we are working with Trinity Lutheran, and they have drawn up a plan. It is with their attorney right now. And so they will be leasing us the parking lot that's right next door, as the Heritage does currently. They lease it from Trinity Lutheran, and we will be doing the same thing.
How many spaces do you have there? You're throwing me off because you keep saying there's no parking. There is parking behind the Heritage Center. It may not be adequate, it may not be a lot, but there is a parking lot.
And
But
it's
we
not
don't,
there.
we won't own it though. So we will have to lease it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's-
Trinity Lutheran owns that parking lot.
That's the piece I didn't have.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I should have known. Okay.
Which the zoning ordinance does allow for shared parking or a lease within a certain distance.
Yeah.
This would comply, would need to be reported, so it's established and it's there.
So I'm
Mr. Miller, go ahead.
listening to Ms. Burzak's comments. Could this be simpler if the social institution was conditional in the commercial office, even on the first floor?
Make it a conditional use permit?
Correct. To change the zoning to get rid of the not on street level in commercial office.
That's what they're proposing.
Okay, that's what I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on.
Based on their request, like if you look on packet page 48. Yeah, that's- If you look at packet page 58. In the far right hand column under permitted district. You can see where they changed the medium heavy, which is what that they are. They crossed out under the C, which is a conditional use. And the condition is that it's not on the first floor. They struck out CO and moved it under to permitted. So it's still a medium heavy district use. It just falls as a permitted use rather than a conditional use, which requires you not to.
Thank you.
So is there a reason though we want it to only be in the CO? Why a social institute could not be in the downtown per se?
I think we were just looking at their particular situation. They're representing this piece.
But if we're going to change the ordinance, wouldn't we want to take into account the possibility of correcting it so that we don't need to come back and do it again?
I think the districts are very different. The downtown district is different goals than the commercial office.
I agree.
Yeah, I tend to
So
agree with that.
so my feeling was that office should not be social institutions should be separated out from office. It's totally different. And that they should be looked at totally as two separate categories, separate them apart and allow the social institutes in the CO and the D as, you know, and then, the light, you know, the office use in the downtown is not allowed on the first floor. I agree with that, but I just don't see them all lumped, that they should still be lumped together as, in the same classification for what's used and what's not being allowed.
Right, let's take a look at, just in the world of unintended consequences, which I live. Let's look at page 52.
52?
It's your zoning map, which is really hard. We don't have one of those that we can just zip right up there on the screen, do we? That'd be a really good idea.
Yeah.
But let's take a look. So we are looking at the proposed area where this would become permitted on the first floor, correct? Is the gray area, it's really tight, or the pink and gray?
It's already allowed in the pink area. This is changing.
Correct.
for the light
Grays.
gray area.
The light gray area only, not the COB commercial office district.
It would be the dark gray too.
Dark, okay, so down there, the film, remind everybody what's down there in that dark gray area.
Gray area, COB, that's everything predominantly east of Main Street and north of Broad Street. It's where the
Courthouse, jail,
story main
mini mart,
building,
Across the street.
right over there.
Yeah.
This office building across the street, the old Fifth Third office building. And then and that's a COB district, and that's the only place where that is located. And then there's a couple single-story buildings across the street from the store.
So the mini mart. The mini mart area, that courthouse, we call it courthouse.
Any of the buildings that have frontage on Main Street are located in the C commercial district.
Just,
Little area down by Hilltop,
oh,
Mominy Drive, over on the other side of the river.
okay, let's. Ah, yes, there you go, down there at the bottom, yep, full pop. Mominy, that's interesting. Other questions?
So on the,
Mr. Miller,
as it is existing, when it reads conditional, what are the conditions?
One condition is it's not on the street level.
Okay, that, just the street level is the only
That's the
condition.
condition they have.
Thank you. I agree with, you know, what Attorney Schmidt had talked about, that I think commercial office and downtown zoning has different goals. And I think it would, for me, it would be a lot more of an intense review to consider downtown as well. It's pretty easy for me on the surface to look at, or at least to consider the impact to commercial office, A and B, than it would be to also consider downtown.
I have a question, staff, you know, my fear of geography and all that kind of good stuff, geometry. I have to see things. I'm not very visual. Examples of other medium-heavy social institutions. Curious Kids, we've determined is one. Help me out. What else could I be? What else could I open in any of these districts on the first floor? Give me some examples.
So we amended the regulations before COVID for area agency on aging when they bought the old
Right.
Honor Credit Union building.
It's because they had meeting rooms and classrooms. Yes,
On the ground floor.
correct.
That's probably the biggest one. We also.
Elks Lodge, Moose Hall, are they social institutions, medium heavy?
So medium heavy would, in the ordinance, it says centers for social activities such as neighborhood, community, or senior centers, military schools, business, trade, and vocational schools, arts, music, and dance schools, drivers training, institutions for higher education, auditoriums, soup kitchens, places for public assembly, that are some of the examples that are listed.
Right.
Crazzle Art Center.
Yeah, it would have to be. And I asked that only because of the television in the window. What else are we saying yes to? It's a good idea just to, and where are we saying yes to it? Because it impacts citywide. So that's why I take that little trip. Okay. Other questions? You've been
I
keep-
have one for
Mr.
Sarah.
Yurick.
Is there any way that we can just isolate it to just this property? This approval? That way we don't have to worry about the unintended consequences. And I'm for figuring out a way to make this happen, because it seems to make a lot of sense. But if we change the zoning, then we impact a lot of things that we don't necessarily know the impact of.
You would have to get into zoning to one parcel. Yeah, I mean, the only way to do that would be for that parcel received for a commercial district.
Or a PUD.
Yeah, that would work.
Because with a PUD, then you could write conditions in the PUD that the parking that they have is adequate, or shared parking agreements of
Or use-
X, or,
Or use.
because
some-
I'm just concerned that, okay, we do this, and then later on down the road, parking is gonna be the issue.
But I think that gets back to the existing process in the zoning ordinance for parking on adjacent properties or shared use, where it is allowed. And there's processes set up for having that document recorded.
Well, here's the thing. Now that I understand what Mr. Everett meant by there's no parking, there really is no parking. Okay, so that's zero. You got to look at what are we accomplishing? If they are going to have to provide parking for this use in some amount we can't determine because we haven't determined the usable of their design, whatever their plan's going to be. I mean, to that point, if they don't have it, or they can't afford what Trinity's asking, or there are any kinds of business factors that could influence their ability to lease what they've been doing for years, theoretically. I'm not saying they would do that. I'm just saying we've got to looking at the big picture. So what would be the downside of a PUD that one of the conditions would be we would not require parking? And you're not changing the entire order. I'm not saying I necessarily have any problem with all of those uses in the commercial districts. That's why I just wanted some examples of how would I feel if some of those things went into the first floor of that bank building, which they could be, because that's in the zoning. It's not just always one building, and I don't think about zoning for one, Mr. Yurick, because I think that comes real close to spot zoning. I'm not sure that's a route I'm prepared to go. I don't necessarily have a problem at all with the use or the proposal. I'm just looking at other consequences, and is there an easier way to do this without necessarily changing the ordinance? Did staff talk about a PUD with the applicant?
No, because if you look at the PUD regulations, you need to provide 20% open space on the property, and there's a lot of things that are excluded from that open. Any required setbacks don't count towards the open space regulations.
Okay.
Minimum acreage? Is that one principle? Minimum acreage also? For a PUD?
I don't know how you get around that, the 20%.
I don't know what a hardship PUD is. I just know there's language associated with a hardship PUD.
It's also true.
I don't think the regulations the PUD requirements are met in this situation.
I have another question for staff. Is the usage and how it is applied here, is it subjective? Or is it, I don't see any wording here that references specifically a museum. If it was considered light, does that change the argument? Not medium heavy? And then we go back to having to do nothing.
You know, if you look at what's defined under light, it says predominantly for office operations. And this really isn't.
No, it's
constant office
awful.
Operations, they do have offices in there, but that's not the primary use.
But it references Red Cross, Salvation Army, so it would just be the office portion of a Salvation Army would be considered light?
No. It's,
Again, we try to look at all the aspects here to figure out where the fit without the PUD regulations, it's not fit the situation. It's not a hardship because there's nothing there. It can still be used for a permitted purpose. That's one of the main requirements for hardship PUD. It's not a light social institutional use
That's-
based on what they're proposing within it. So it is.
Well, that was my question. Is that subjective or is that clearly defined that way? Because I don't see it referenced as a museum anywhere in that word. And that we're generally being described. You're saying it's primarily an office use,
No.
but then it references some other things that aren't necessarily primarily office.
so to that end, how did we talk ourselves out of this not being a public building?
Not owned by the public, it's a private nonprofit building.
Correct, and in public buildings, you can have non-city owned buildings.
It's not a public building, it's not owned by government or governmental unit of public entity, it's a private company. That's the first place we started. And they reference museums in that, but that
Correct.
is the description. It's not, you know, as an example, it doesn't mean everything that uses the word museum is a public building.
Right. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I fully support it. I mean, I've got no problem with it. My only problem is that I don't want parking to come back and be the issue.
But I think my understanding from city staff is it still needs to be addressed. Right? It's not,
Are they going to get permitted and allowed to open if they don't meet the requirement for parking in that zoning district, even if they don't own the lot behind it? They,
Provide that they have,
nobody's,
we're gonna look at. two-
a lease,
a
something,
lease that has to be recorded, but if, again, if it comes back because it was a non-conforming piece of property, I mean, the building on there has no parking, the property has no parking. So you have to look at what the previous use was and what the new use is, and if there's an increase in the number of required parking spaces for the new use, then you'll provide the spaces. Otherwise, it's a wash because it's already been addressed or people are parking on the street. They're doing what they need to do because they know their clients need parking.
what's the parking requirement in its immediately preceding use? We should be able to ascertain that. As the Heritage Center, part museum, part banquet facility, wedding reception hall, whatever you want to call it, what was the parking requirement for in that? That would be the prior use, correct? That you would be doing your comparative analysis with. So what was the parking requirement for that?
In the file, it doesn't say how much parking was required. It just tells us what the occupancy of the building is.
And I'm guessing you're kind of here on your own without any construction, quiet, engineer over here, construction, but in terms of what the square footage of that building is, that's not, is that something you know what your square footage is?
I have that, yes. So The total existing square footage of that building is 16,658 square feet. And we would propose to add 1,166 usable square footage, so it would end at 17,824.
Without the,
I think some of it went down because you have less usable areas.
let's just humor us. 16.6. Let's just say 16.6 was the square footage for the Heritage Center that in the use that they had. What would have been their parking requirement?
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah, Heritage Center, as it was till just not too very long ago. If we accept that they had 16,658 or roughly 16,000 usable square footage.
One space for every 6 persons of legal capacity is established by local, county, or state fire, building, or health codes. Is our parking requirement for auditoriums other than incidental to schools or churches, lodges, halls, fraternal organizations, private clubs, public meeting halls, community centers, or buildings of similar use without fixed seats?
And what was it again?
One space per every 6 persons of legal capacity.
I assume that's not mental legal capacity. That would be physical capacity, correct? Wow, we got to work on that part. We got to get done with that ordinance. So how would we calculate? What I'm trying, again, all of this, believe it or not, is good. You've been steady there a long time, but I'm trying to figure out because they are understandably increasing their square footage. That is typically at this moment in time, only going to increase the parking requirement. Am I correct? Because if you're going to go on a comparative analysis with what was required from the prior use and what is going to be required with the new use and increased square footage, it's going to go up. To Mr. Everett's point.
Potentially, but
Potentially.
Shepherd Hall is open space. Caleb, Trudy, you're how many square feet per a chair? 6 or 15? Yeah, but if you just put chairs, you can go 7? Yeah, so I mean, Shepherd Hall alone can drive that occupancy number substantially versus if we're putting displays and activities and things like that, all of a sudden that assembly number goes down. Theoretically, that could drive the parking requirement down. And if staff is assuring us that we aren't going to increase capacity, then
So what we could find in the file from the 1994 or the 1990s building we've done. The capacity of the building was, the first floor reception was 189 guests and rest of the building was 200. So that brings you to 389. If you use just the plain 6 per capacity, that would get you to 64 spaces. A museum needs to have 1 space for every 800 square feet of usable area, plus 1 space for every 4 employees. So that's about 23 spaces plus the number of employees. So it would go down.
Thank you.
But it would be further reviewed as we move through. the process.
And that would need, and I don't think the additional, what'd you tell me, 11,066 square feet?
1,100.
1,100. Okay.
I have
Would
a
alter it that
question
much.
for the
Yes, Ms.
applicant.
Burzak.
So it just says you want to expand. What type of uses will be in that facility versus you're keeping all the other facilities you already have? What are you going to have there?
It will be similar, so we will have hands-on learning activities for children.
So do you perceive that, let's just say, I'm gonna arbitrarily say someone that buys a yearly pass to the, would they be allowed to go to all the facilities?
There will be an option for that, or they
Okay.
can buy, as it is currently, they can buy a pass to the one on the bluff or one below the bluff or a joint
Or
pass. Mhm.
Okay, so based on that, let's say you park somewhere and you go to the one down by the carousel, you're already parked and you find out that you can go to all 3. Is it perceivable that someone might walk to the other two locations if it's the same type of use?
We would hope. I mean, we
yeah.
currently don't have a parking lot.
Okay.
There's
So
city
I
lots on
was-
either side that we have zero control
Because I
over.
apologize for asking, but it wasn't clear to me what your use was going to be in this building. I couldn't find exactly, it just said expand, so I was wondering if you were going to do something differently that would be totally different from what the other two have. So it sounds to me like they're,
We're just creating a permanent home. The
Yeah.
lease will end
Sure.
on Lake Boulevard.
Yep.
So
And
it-
we,
okay, so it seems like walkability and everything again, that it just further promotes that.
yeah, we have ideas of having like wagons that have RFID tags. And so if someone wants to take one from one building to the next, then we know where to go get it and
Yeah.
return it. But that's
Oh,
all.
Yeah.
Right. If there aren't any other questions for our applicant, I'm going to let her sit down because I got to see if there's anybody else that would like to comment. And then if we have other questions, we'll have you come back up and you get a break. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak to this application? Anybody? Close the public hearing. All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure with regard to this application?
I am in support of the application. Anything we can, I'm assuming this is the only way that we can do it to make it happen based on our current zoning regulations, and I'm in support of it.
All right, Mr. Yurick? Anybody else? It does appear that many alternatives were at least looked at. We may be down to the only way to do this. I hear absolutely no problem with the use or the proposal from anybody. That's the good part. That being the case, ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion. Mr. Yurick?
Move to recommend approval of the proposed amendment to Article 4, Sections 4.6.3, Table 4-1 and 4.6.4, Table 4-2, and Article 11, Section 11.12.22 to allow medium-heavy social institution uses as a permitted use in the CO district rather than a conditional use in the zoning ordinance of the city of St. Joseph, Michigan, based on the factors set forth under Section 22.3 of the zoning ordinance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yurick, for your motion. Do I have support for his motion?
Support.
Ms. Rice, I think I heard you. Ms. Rice supports the motion. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the clerk may call the roll.
Ms. Rice,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Eber.
Yes.
Ms. Burzak.
Yes.
Chair Hartle.
Yes.
Mr. Test,
Yes.
Mr. Earl.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
When will they be on their way to the city commission? Do we know? Can we tell them?
We're hoping to get them on the January 13th agenda for the first reading.
Okay, stay in touch with that and work on your parking because I do not want to hear him say, I told you so for the next 5 years. And he will. Good luck with that. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing with regard to the property at 101 Broad Street. And Wrights is here, Wally and Gertz, an amendment to the plan unit development with waivers and expansion of a concession area. Going to open up the public hearing. I take it you are, is it Miss, am I pronouncing that correctly? Reitz, Miss Reitz?
Right, Rick?
No, I would prefer to be accurate. Is it Miss Reitz?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have your proposal and had a chance to review it obviously in advance, so
Great.
tell us what you're asking from us today, if you would, please.
Thank you all, first of all, for your time. I appreciate all of your attendance today. My name is Ann Reitz. I am the owner and operator of Wally and Gertz, also known as Silver Beach Concession Stand, for almost 14 years now. So we're pretty familiar with what our customers' needs are, what we've got going on down there. So what we want to try to do is enhance, most of all, for number one, is enhance the customer's overall experience as it stands at Silver Beach concession stand. The stand itself was built as a temporary structure around 30+ years ago, and it is quite small and doesn't really meet the needs of the customers or the passersby, whatnot. So what we'd like to do is we propose to add some shipping containers and maybe a food truck and a oversized beach chair. And so you're presenting like a better aesthetic as you're approaching the stand. We want to pour some concrete in the sand where you're approaching. I don't know where this is a good one. So when you're driving in to the stand, the concrete, we want to add some concrete there to kind of group the tables together and create a little plaza there. So they have more of a designated area. Right now, all of our tables are scattered around. But in order, and also add a few ADA tables as well. But we want to have some sunshades. And the chair, the oversized chair would be a nice photo op to present or to advertise both Silver Beach and the Wally and Gertz as well. But so right now we are capturing, as the building stands, our windows of operation are facing the west. So only if you're on the beach does it look like a concession stand. So we're missing all of the people on the east side. And there's a lot of people that just come down to the beach that want to, grab a water and walk the pier. They don't want to lay on the beach. So, and a lot of people that come to the Silver Beach, they're attending the concerts down at the other end. So they just want to grab a water, maybe a quick hot dog or whatever. So we're facing the other end. People don't know we're open. And so we're requesting from the commission the use of the PUDs, some shade, some tables, the concrete, and a chair, kind of in a nutshell. So I've enlisted Pantelleri Construction to help me put this plan together, and I've got Mike here as well. And I don't know if there's technical or specific questions that he might be able to answer, but we're both here for you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions for our applicants first from commissioners, Mr. Uri.
So I'm assuming you're paying for the improvements,
Yes.
and who's going to maintain these?
I am.
Help me understand, this is county property? That the city, why does the city have jurisdiction over this? Is there a?
Because
What do we do?
it's in the city.
Okay.
Because it's-
Land use development, this is a change to it. It was in place before those regulations were, but when they changed it, there's no water recreation district that requires it. Okay.
Understood. Right.
Ms.
I have
Burzak.
just a question, comment.
Yeah.
I like that the plan that's presented pretty much utilizes space that doesn't take any additional space from the beach area.
Right, right.
Because the beach.
That was
tends be
important
at
to
times
us.
Way too overcrowded.
Yep.
I like the idea of the accessibility, and make sure you follow the guidelines for the number of ADA tables necessary
Yes.
versus other tables.
Yep.
And the only thing I thought when I looked at it, you know, this is the perfect location for all of this because the view is already blocked there anyway.
Right.
So I appreciate the fact that there won't be any views eliminated. I was concerned about the food truck because at first I thought they're gonna pull in and out and there's people there all hours of the day and night, but then I read you're gonna leave it there.
Yeah,
So that's not a concern. The only other thing I might add is that it would be really nice if the oversized Michigan Adirondack chair that's really cool
yeah.
could also be made with maybe the mobility mat so that someone in a wheelchair might have the same opportunity to get their picture taken in front of it with the beach background. But other than that, I think this is a really nice addition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll be very attractive and thanks for doing your homework with all the pictures and the
Yes,
views and everything.
thank
Appreciate
you.
that you came prepared. So
Appreciate
thank
that.
you.
That's a good point with the chair.
Yeah, that was the only thing I saw that it is one element. Everything else looks totally accessible to all users, but you know, anyone that has
Yes.
a little bit of limited mobility, that might be a little difficult.
I
for
think
them.
there's some other maybe shots that show like as you're approaching the containers. They're maybe not this one, but the window where you can purchase, see that one has it.
Yeah.
Around the corner,
Yeah,
it's a lower, so
Yeah.
if you're in a wheelchair, you
Yeah.
can come up. Yep, and place your order and then go sit down and then.
yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we kept that in mind and everything there is lower than the concession stand structure itself. So
Yeah.
Other questions from commissioners for our applicant? Mr. Miller?
Do you require any approvals from the county?
at this time, no.
It looks like this proposal hides the.
Sorry,
go
sorry,
ahead.
excuse me. I did get approval from the county, so we don't have
Oh,
any more.
All right,
to-
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
It looks like this proposal hides the existing trash setup down there.
Yes.
That's nice, because that's kind of an
Yes,
ugly,
that was one of our big points too. I don't think we have a picture, but yes, as you're approaching the facility, it's always been that the trash pile up was visible.
Yeah.
So we propose to cover that up.
nice.
Other questions?
Okay, yes, and the utilities also that were exposed, we'll be covering those up as well.
Mr. Test?
And just a quick question, the food will not be prepared in either of the cargo containers you've got listed here? Will it be brought in from the main concession
Yes.
to them?
Yes.
Okay.
As it stands right now, all the food, yes, we may assemble it, some of it in one of the trucks, but one of the containers is actually going to be for merchandise, sunscreen, towels, like a lot of people don't know that we sell all of that stuff. And so on their way back to the car, they were like, oh, you've got sunscreen. We didn't know that. So it's a better presentation for the customer and
Any other questions for our applicant?
The plan is for the food truck to be your food truck?
yeah, they're all mine and they're all removable.
Okay, but you weren't planning on, food truck A this week, food truck B next week. Right now, you're planning on your food truck.
Yep.
Thank
You
you.
mean I own
You're not
it?
bringing in other vendors?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah,
It's mine. You're
It's a
correct.
Wally and Gertz,
Yep,
essentially food truck and consistency on that.
you're correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for our applicant? Mr. Test?
One last
Sure.
question. Will there be a public walking area connected to the cement walk path that goes behind it currently? Or will they walk right
think one of-
through?
You mean like this angle?
Yes, will they walk through all of
They'll-
this to get behind your current structure?
All the path, let me see.
Isn't there one that comes down
This
and
one,
goes
oh, that one.
adjacent to the
See, yeah, right
existing
here.
blue building right now?
Right here, so they start. Is this one acceptable, what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if you're walking along the beach walkway currently
Mm-hmm.
and with this new addition, that's a roadway right there where your mouse is, no?
The black
That's the
portion is
sidewalk.
roadway, the gray is all concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you help me that's the current restroom, correct?
Yep, the
Existing
blue
building, the
building.
blue?
Mhm.
And is there not a walkway right now, right in front of it, right here?
Yes, there is.
So is that walkway now gonna go directly through this entire seating area is what I'm asking?
It's going around where that yellow, yeah, I guess it goes around.
Essentially, we're not creating any additional walkway
No.
or blocking any.
They'll have, if you're asking if there's an accessible route to it, the main walk is the accessible route that goes into that area. So you enter and exit from the main route into that area. There's not a walk from that area that connects to the beach, but is that what you're asking?
Not asking about connecting to the beach, no. Currently, is there not a walking path right here that goes all the way down to
Yes,
the
there
next
is.
pavilion? And is it not gonna go right directly through here then?
It can, yeah. It just depends on the position of the containers.
So it's not gonna impede the public is what I'm getting at.
No.
No.
No,
Okay,
they can easily access it on all angles.
okay.
Other questions for our applicant? Thank you both. I'm going to hear from the public and there may be some other questions. We'll bring you back up.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to this proposal? Anybody? Kirsten, have we received any public comment in writing or other forms to the city? Okay, going once, going twice. Close the public hearing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure? Comments, discussion, Ms. Burzak?
Oh, I was gonna make a motion, but if you want discussion, I'll.
Well, we can,
Well, I'm ready for a little discussion before
oh,
a
all
motion.
right, can you hold on? Mr.
For, I guess for the city staff, like these, cargo containers, they would be subject to our property maintenance code. So if property maintenance code deemed them unacceptable, we would go through that process as
The
it,
paints are peeling off of Makex.
thank you.
Mr. Everett?
Refresh my memory on our ordinance. I mean, everything here with the exception of the posts that hold the screens are temporary.
I think the way they're planning on installing the two cargo containers, the chair, it'll be there permanently. Like you're not planning on moving them out during the winter months.
Correct. But by the nature of the beast, they are,
But in the
Temporary.
future, I believe the applicant is aware of what's going on with the county and any possible future improvements, whenever that will be. So it could change 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
You know,
What,
application-
what you would like to
They have a,
help us out?
yeah, the county's adopted a new parks plan. And this park is part of it. I think maybe you guys can talk more about it. Or I think someone from the county is, oh, you're from the county, aren't you?
Yeah.
You can talk more about that.
There is plans to renew concession stand.
There's plans to do what? I'm sorry.
There's plans to revisit the concession stand of redoing that whole temporary structure.
Whole temporary structure, which part of, so everything down there you view as temporary?
Well, the building itself was a temporary building, built in 2003.
So a temporary building.
nothing more permanent than a temporary structure.
Temporary structure for, it's been there for 22 to almost 30 years. Yeah, okay. Okay, but the applicant is fully aware of that.
My question goes to, I mean, we're approving something that's temporary. I mean, I know we have temporary language in the ordinance. What am I doing?
If it is, I mean, do it,
Well, because it's a PUD and it's not shown on the original site plan,
Mhm.
staff really can't approve it. In addition, because it's in the overlay district, the heights are taller than what they can be. So the PUD allows for that.
But I mean, the county could put a food truck in the parking lot and so be it. I mean, my truck goes in the parking lot. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know why we're delineating.
Cargo containers, because they will be there. They're not on wheels, they don't roll away, you know, every day or
But they can.
once a year. They could, but
Yeah.
I think the way that they've talked about connecting them into the sand so they don't tip over, they're permanent structures or however long the park district allows them to be there.
And I have no problem with the issue. I just want to make sure that am I even required to approve this?
Ms. Burzak,
So from a PUD standpoint, even though they're temporary, but they could end up being there a number of years before any other improvements take place. I think to keep things in order, it's a change to the PUD. That I understand why they're asking us to review this and give approval, and I appreciate the opportunity that we have to do so. And, you know, I think it's important that, you know, especially with it being an overlay district that has height restrictions, that we are considerate of where these things are going. And that's what I stated earlier, that I appreciate the fact that you're not blocking views nor taking away more beach area because of the importance of both. So, if we're ready, I can make a motion, or do we
see if
want
we have
more
any other any other discussion from commissioners?
I think it's a very attractive application. Sometimes when we get applications, even though it's not a primary factor, I will consider the history of an applicant. Sometimes, you know, we've got some businesses that we've got very positive history with, some businesses maybe not as positive. I think this applicant has shown very strong ownership of her properties in the city. Both Wally and Gertz, Cafe Tosi, I think have been very well ownership properties, and they're very attractive. So I expect very good things from this.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, then what is your pleasure? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a
Ms.
motion.
Burzak, please.
Move to recommend approval of a third amendment to the 1997 planned unit development located at 101 Broad Street in the W Water Recreation District, requested by Ann Reeds, owner of Wally and Gertz, on behalf of Barron County, the property owner, to allow: one, expand the concession area with seating, 2 cargo containers, 1 food truck, photograph chair, and 2, obtain height waivers for 5 grids from map 9-1 ranging from 1 foot to 20.05 feet, and specifically listed in the staff memorandum for the January 2nd, 2025 Planning Commission packet, and based on the 12-page document prepared by Pantalera Construction Services and found in the January 2nd, 2025 Planning Commission packet, as it meets the required standards under section 13.3.1, 13.6.1, and 13.6.3 of the zoning ordinance.
All right, thank you, Ms. Burzak. I have a motion. Do I have support for her motion? Mr. Yurick supports the motion. Is there further discussion on the motion? I closed I closed the public hearing. You have a what, sir? I'm sorry?
Discussion on the motion, not the public hearing.
That was directed planning commissioners. What is your question, sir?
My question is, motion, where is that made? This was requested by him on behalf of Barron County property owner. That's not what the application said.
Kristen?
The Marion County Park District, on behalf of Marion County's property owner, Marion County Park District signed the application, giving the applicant permission to go through the process.
Well, then that brings up the question of 13.3.2 of our ordinance. Eligibility requirement for the appropriations district. And it talks about this and that and so forth. It says the fund shall remain under the control and authority of the single individual, corporate, or organizational owner. who is authorized to administer the PUD. The figure is, that means every PUD in the city that has tenants, the tenant, any particular tenant can come in and say,
Has what?
has tenants
Tenants.
or workers, or actually probably even people who go there on your basis, they can come in and request changes in the PUD. Where that specifically is saying there's one group or organization that has control with it.
All right, thank you. Council, what do we need to do if anything? Berrien County is the owner, no question about that, so they can apply. This is their designated individual that they have sanctioned. Barry, are you here with the capacity, whoever you are, sir? I'm sorry, I don't know you, I apologize. The authority to designate that she is here with your authority to act? That's a yes, okay, thank you.
For the record, can you identify?
We're gonna need you to, why don't you come up, since Mr. Sanders has made this issue, can you ask you to join us and just officially tell us who you are and what part of the county you represent, and we'll see what we can do here. And just have a seat, you can be comfortable.
My name is Jason Field. I'm the park manager at Solar Beach County Park.
Okay, all right, so you're the park manager and a county employee? Okay. All right, so council, where does that leave us with?
The county has given the street permission to go ahead and apply to this on their behalf. I don't think it's an issue, right? She has permission. She could not do that on her own without the property owner's.
It's on packet page 83. We, the owners of the property listed below, hereby grant permission for the applicant and reads. I mean, it's on the final page, of giving permission to her, and they've signed it and it's been notarized.
Do we see any way that this affects any other PUD in the city of St. Joe with people, anybody walking right in to ask to change a PUD by virtue of allowing this?
Would always need to.
Approve it. Can't be here unless you are with the sanctioned authority of the owner of the property. Was my understanding of the ordinance. All right, we have sorry, we got sidetracked. Remind me who was the moving party, Ms. Burzak?
Yes.
And seconding party was Mr. Urich. Do you have any objection going forward at this time?
No.
Any objection going forward at this time?
Do not.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the clerk may call the roll.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Eber,
Yes.
Ms. Burzak,
Yes.
Chair Hartzell.
Yes.
Mr. Test,
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich,
Yes.
Ms. Rice.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right, their next stop will be the city commission. Yes, but we're thinking tentative date.
February 3rd, because it is a public hearing, you know.
Right, so stay in touch with staff that should the dates change, but look, it looks like a wonderful project, so thank you. All right, before we begin old business, I will tell you that I've received some subtle pressure from some fellow members about, we'll go for a while, but I'm aware of the fact that there's some stuff on television, some folks here wanted to try and see, but I get that.
13-3 at half, in case anybody didn't know.
Oh, my.
Who's winning?
Who's the?
Notre Dame.
We have two items of old business. First being a continuation of our discussion of mechanical equipment, changes to the ordinance. This was on last month's, obviously, agenda. Again, part of the cancellation of our December meeting. We're here to continue that, and I guess in terms of see where people stand on the changes made by staff, which took into consideration many of the things that were raised, which I was pleased that they did. We've had additional input that we've all had a chance to review. So we're really focused on the proposed ordinance incorporating some of the concerns, new language that's all been provided to you. See if we are at a point where we can send that off to be scheduled for public hearing and reading and all the good stuff that comes from that. Because I don't think that's going to have to be a public hearing with us, correct, council? So we can't do that today, but we can tell you if it's in position to do that at our next meeting, correct? Okay. All right. I think I want to thank staff because I think a tough issue it captured what I think needed to be captured. You know, I'm going to lead off and I want to be very clear about this. I went to Trudy, Caleb, Kristen, council. I did read the supporting documentation that we had here, the only one that was with our packet. And I want you to know that I'm not concerned today, tomorrow, or a week from now that we're going to have an enforcement problem with the city of St. Joseph. And I think our staff will carry out their jobs to the best of their ability. And at least that's been my experience working with city staff for a lot longer than any of you been employed here, I can tell you that. But I have confidence and I, again, it's a valid opinion to hold. I respect it, but I don't share it. And I don't think that's a basis to guide enactment of an ordinance. So that's all I wanted to say on that. And the whole, I think they've captured the compromise we suggested well. I listen very hard to what the police fire chief says. And if what they recommend and would like to have carries some weight with me, it has before and will continue to do so. Ms. Burzak, you wish to be heard.
So, based on, I fully agree, based on, public safety, I think the document presented, is very good. It reflects, all the comments and everything. The only thing that I feel that could be modified, and this is my opinion, I went and looked at a residence that has a unit in their rear yard. It's closer than 3 feet to the property line, but it is clearly not obstructing the side yards for the fire, public and safety seem to be the issue. If they can't gain access through a side yard, if there's not enough room, because your next door neighbor could have a fence on the property line and then your unit could be blocking access. So I fully support and agree on the side yard, that everything that's the way it's worded. But in a backyard, a rear yard, I would like to suggest that we consider allowing them in the rear yard as long as they're not within 3 feet of the side lot lines, so that the 3-foot side yard setback area requirement, so that public safety has access then continues to the rear yard. And as long as that clear access zone is there, I don't see any reason why the rear yard, if it, again, the public and safety issues are related to access, then we would need to have the 3-foot clearance in the rear yard. And I went and looked at
Help us out. Where were you at?
okay, so there's a couple of places. First of all, in the definitions packet page.
No, the properties you looked
Oh,
at as
So
examples.
I
in
went and
case-
looked at a neighbor's house down on Lions Park that has and so we have, tight lot lines down there and everything. And I went and looked at the parcel. They have fences on the sides of the house, they all pretty much do. And the unit is set back at least probably 5 feet from the side lot line, and it's right against the fence almost. It has the clearance necessary for the circulation. But to me, it seems totally appropriate because again, there's such a small little lawn yard that pushing it out into the lawn yard, from a mowing standpoint, because they have a really neat trimmed yard with landscaping and everything. So after looking at that, I kind of thought I'd like to reevaluate the rear yard, because if the main purpose of needing access is the clearances for public safety, and you allow that, and you keep the unit at least 3 or 5 feet, whatever distance you wanted from the corner of the side yard to allow the public safety to come around into the backyard, I didn't see really why the backyard then would become a factor for why it needed to be stuck 3 feet out in the yard. Again, when some of these properties are 33 foot wide. And so it even looks more out of place having it stuck out further into the yard. So that's my only comment. The only thing I thought that now that I've kind of looked at it a little more, I think that based on fire and safety would not present any problem whatsoever as long as we had access.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
So I still have the opinion that I would prefer not to make changes. If I'm correct, our current side yard setback is 7 feet for a home.
If the wall is firing.
Okay, or 7 or 5 feet, right? And that's still 5 feet that still creates space for these mechanical units to exist. The rear setback is 30 feet. I agree with public safety's input with providing the area they requested. I want to protect neighboring properties from the nuisance, potential nuisance of service access to these types of units. I want to protect neighboring properties from the nuisance of a replacement unit possibly having to be larger. And I want to protect neighboring properties from certain style units that in particular vent horizontally, that would vent hot air onto a neighboring property if it was close enough. So just my perspective is to leave these things unchanged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I don't necessarily share those concerns. I don't know that, I certainly don't share the concerns of the fire department. I mean, as obtuse as that sounds, I don't share those concerns. I mean, you can put up a fence and block that access far more than you can with a air conditioning unit. Yeah, so I don't see the need for that 3 feet. I don't share it in the backyard either. Yeah, so I really don't see why we need to drive those limitations.
Anybody else? All right, again, not a public hearing, but we'll take public comment if anybody wishes additional public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure? We send this on as is to be proposed as an ordinance change, we do nothing? Or, I guess, council, the direction that we do with this proposal from staff, that needs to be does that need to be in a motion? Well, the decision, and we're hearing some folks say we don't need to do anything, just leave our ordinance as it is. And take no action on this proposal. Perfectly legitimate position to have. Some may say, no, I think we need to do this. Some might want to do more, some might want to do less. But whatever we decide, it isn't to us yet to vote on as an ordinance. This is all discussion. So what, if anything, do you need from us beyond a consensus?
Really, that's what we would need, as a consensus to bring something forward for you to vote on.
Or not,
Or
or something different?
right.
Okay.
And I guess. Yeah, just the clarification is, I mean, if you're talking about. I think the two comments in general, I took that as being whether it's currently existing or not, with construction or currently existing. I don't know if there's a difference between not existing, non-conformities or not. That would be a question as you're moving forward on direction to us, because right now, the way we have it phrased in new construction would apply, the ordinance, I think that would apply to those non-conformities could remain if they meet that criteria. That's how it was drafted.
That's how it was drafted. Our existing ordinance, without hiding that today, they would have to be replaced and moved. It's what- And I think what I heard you say was you are fine with that, with no change.
Correct.
And I think that's what I heard you say as well. We don't need to do this. What we have is okay.
No,
No,
Exactly.
that's not what I heard Sean say.
Okay, part of it. Then
And I'm in the middle.
it's time to be clear. Okay, all right. So I want to understand your position. there's part of this you do think is necessary and part you do not.
I am fine with being able to replace your air conditioning unit or your condensing unit in the location where it currently is.
Okay.
Not allowing a 3-foot side yard, wherever it is.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the clarity.
Okay.
So where were you a year ago?
What
So
about new
What
construction,
about new
Sean?
construction? Same position. Would be, to be consistent, you're gonna be consistent, would be the same for new construction.
Yeah, what about
No,
new,
what I heard is new construction would be what.
to meet the criteria?
I really haven't wrapped my head fully around that, I don't think. I mean, when I look at Lions Park Drive in particular, and you look at the new construction, yes, I am not seeing an air conditioner condenser on the side of the house. However, I am seeing the exhaust and intake for the furnace coming out that wall directly at the house next door. So when I think about that, okay, now your furnace exhaust is 6 feet away from your neighbor's house or whatever the setbacks are. No, and there are a number of them down there where I mean, they set the furnace in the middle of the house, as one might. So your furnace exhaust and intake is right in the middle of the house, facing your neighbor's house. To me, you've got an exhaust right there. I mean, you can blur your eyes and say, okay, that's more impactful than a condensing unit sitting there.
One at 912 is right across from the neighbor's door.
Yeah, so I'm not convinced that it's something that we need to, whether it's new construction or old construction. I mean, new construction, we've got a 5-foot minimum setback, 7-foot required, 5-foot if you fire rate things. You know, nobody wants to run any more line set than they have to out their condensing unit. So I don't know that anybody's going to put their condensing unit on the property line just 'cause. So I don't know that there's really a problem there to differentiate from new construction to replacing existing.
Well,
I'm in agreement with Mr. Aber on the replacement. I think a homeowner should be able to put the condensing unit in the same location. Understand that the condensing unit might be a little larger. So there's an issue there as to that's not something I have an understanding of, but if the unit is bigger, what do we do with it?
But-
That would be the question I would.
so if the unit's bigger and the only way at Lions Park to get access to the back of the property is through the side yards and all the houses are fenced, how are you getting back there? If there's something going on in the back of the property that you need to access and you've got a condenser unit sitting there that's 4 feet wide and the firemen and the equipment are supposed to squeeze through a 1-foot space. So I feel that new construction, it should
Please.
be in the back of the property and that if you have 3 foot to work with, so they have the public safety asks for 3 foot of clearance on the side yards. And so I feel that I appreciate their opinion and their need for that. And on the side yards, if that is the reason they need 3 foot is for clearance to get through there, I agree that on the side yards, you need 3 foot minimum to put it in the side yard. But any new construction should be in the backyard. But then the rear yard again doesn't take that into account because you have clearance. So the rear yard, that's why I said I don't think we need the 3 foot there. So we're all kind of, we're not all totally on the same page. We have at least 3 or 4 different ideas of what we all think is best.
Well, I think making sure that the line sets are as short as possible is a practical consideration. Are you suggesting that we put the condensing units in the back of a building, even though I put my furnace in the center?
Yeah. Yeah,
Doesn't that make that unit less efficient because I'm running these lines further away?
well, but so if you have 5 foot a yard and the unit is 4 foot wide, you're gonna, and then they're all down there, usually fenced tightly, or there's a building wall right next to you, then we're not allowing fire, public safety to have access to the back of the house.
How close can you, how close can you put a condensing unit to a structure?
Probably a foot away, right? Foot away.
There is none manufactured.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's remember, it's not just fire, excuse me. It's not just fire, it's police,
Mm-hmm, both, yeah,
okay?
public safety,
Let's remember, public safety has 2
public
meanings.
safety.
Yeah.
Public safety has said they want 3 feet. So that's where I'm willing, at first I was totally no, they just need to be all, they need to all go in the back, but, and be 3 feet away. But once I looked at the neighbors and seeing the backyard not presenting any issue, being against not, not allowing that extra 3 feet, I understand the rear yard, why I don't feel we need the 3 foot clearance, but on the side yards for public safety, police and fire and anyone else, public safety, I mean, even like, if someone was an ambulance or anyone that needed to get through to the back. So I understand why, they've requested the 3 foot and, so I'm kind of in the middle. I'm willing to give up the 3 foot in the rear yard because it seems unreasonable to need that because they have clearances that they can get through as long as we put it in writing that it has to be a minimum in the rear yard of so many feet from the side yard line. So it'll allow them to get through to the backyard.
Other comments, questions, or direction? Thoughts about what direction to give our staff? Well, I guess for me, I don't think this is quite the issue that based on frequency and numbers that I heard from staff. I'm always in that, careful what you do for 1 or 2 things, a 5 to 10 year period, and we'll have, however, concern was expressed from the city commission. I think that we have come up with it is a compromise that seems to address what I think are the actual concerns, the real issues that have on occasion come up. And I probably lean a little more for Ms. Miller's position in a perfect world. But there were some citizens that apparently had a concern. Okay, we tried to address that, which I think is what city government should try and do when they can. And I have confidence that staff will see it through. So for me, I can live with the compromise that we've arrived here through our various meetings. It's kind of where I am at, but without any further tweaking. I mean, I think we sort of tweaked the heck out of this, if you want to know the truth in terms of how much more we can do, or that there's frankly a need for, to be honest with you. So kind of where I'm coming from. But we got to tell staff to do something, whether they come back and with this as a public hearing with a proposed ordinance change, or, is there a consensus to tweak on anything else, or a consensus to do nothing and leave our ordinance alone? That's a perfectly viable position that Mr. Miller articulates. Those are our choices, but we need to give them some direction.
Specifically, the back of page 1 and 2, what would you like to see?
I'm not suggesting any modification. This was the proposed new language to address what the city commissioners raised and sent to us. So I think there's some other minor changes, but that was, I think the intent provision reads well.
For me, I would eliminate C2 and C3.
Okay, hang on. C2.
Can I speak to that? What number
Please.
2 was, in case it would block the egress window from my bedroom.
Yeah, I think there's other parts of the building code that cover that.
Such as, for those of us that don't have the building code memorized like some of us do.
They're clearance requirements.
Well, for egress window out of a basement, you need 9 square feet. Get out.
But I think Mr. Ebert's point is that's already covered in the building
Is
code.
that covered sufficiently in the building code that you wouldn't need to have it there?
Mhm.
The idea was there's gonna be some cases where something was placed without a permit in a location it shouldn't have been to begin with. If they have the approval to replace it in its spot, we wanted some wording in there to clarify it can't be put back in a place it should.
Like, okay, I'm, again, one of those moments, I'm probably gonna be sorry I asked this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Why can't we just say something along those lines?
That was our justification in that word.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
but what you just told me doesn't have anything to do with egress or ingress or anything else. You're just saying in general, if it was there in a place it was not allowed for at the time of construction or installation, you don't get to have it back. I mean, why do you need to tie it to anything in particular, ventilation or anything else? Because that's not the base.
Because there's some equipment that gets put in without permits and without inspection.
See, that's where I'm coming from. I mean, let's address the problem that you really have rather than go off into all these other things. If you've got a specific, I mean, if you come across someone and they were not permitted and they were not, then why can't the answer just be no if they can't, if they didn't follow the rules? I mean, what's wrong with that? And why tie it to anything? I don't care if it prevents this egress or if you didn't get it right, why can't it?
Well, and to point number 3, any equipment, any replaced equipment is no closer to the lot line than the equipment being replaced. In order, we were trying to figure out how we would enforce it. Okay, so in my mind's eye, it would take a code enforcement person or building inspector going to go out first and look at the equipment first. Okay, and say, yes, this meets these criteria, so you can put it back in that location.
I don't share that concern.
So we just, how will we know it's in the same location? If we don't go look for it.
Well, you're welcome to go look, but I have no problem if I'm 2 inches closer to the property line than my old unit was.
So 2 inches close to the property line than your old one was, as long as you maintain the 3-foot clearance, or are you saying, I'm not understanding now?
This would not be, this is if you don't meet that 3-foot clear. and you
Not
want to
important.
keep your equipment in the same location.
But I thought we were saying that if you don't have the 3-foot clearance, I thought the direction we were giving was that then you have to move it.
No,
No.
not with this proposal.
Yeah, on page
102.
102, it's not conforming, existing, you want to keep it in the same location. And this would allow you to do this.
But I thought in all of our previous discussions, we said if it's non-conforming, that the only way it can stay there is as long as you have the 3-foot clearance. If not, you need to move it to the backyard.
Maybe that we were asked to come up with a compromise. but we tried.
So, okay, so what we're moving forward with is anyone that wants to put their non-conforming equipment back in the side yard will be allowed to do so. They don't have to go into the backyard?
If it meets those criteria.
If it meets this, as presently drafted, those 3 points.
I'm good with the way it's worded. And even though some of these issues might be addressed in other parts of the code, it's nice to have clarity and keep it all together. I think it makes sense.
I share Mr. Yurik's view.
I tend to agree. No issues.
Ms. Rice? Ms. Burzak, oh, you're still mulling, I can see.
Yeah, I don't know what we accomplished, I guess.
Well, we're looking for possibly a majority, at least for a consensus. I'm at 1, 2, 3, they're satisfied with this to come back to us in ordinance form. Mr. Miller has reservations, Mr. Eber has reservations. So is Ms. Burzak,
I'm good.
you're good with it as this drafting? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, there's 4. Close, and we don't have everybody here, but I don't know if that's enough direction for staff, but
If we can bring it back to public hearing, it sounds like in its current long session. And if there are a majority wants to make some adjustments later.
and again, we have members that will be present that could not be here today that may have a completely different view. I have no idea what that might be, but all right, let's do that then. Thank you. I think maybe I appreciate everybody hanging with us this long, but I'm wondering if parking could wait possibly. Are we probably not gonna solve the parking issue in 1 month, I think? Might we solve it in February perhaps and let some of these hardworking folks see the tail end of why they're interested in that game? I have no idea. It's not gonna interrupt my dinner, but I'm sensing that there are some folks that might like to see the tail end of this game. I have a question. Before we do that, what do we have on the docket, on the agenda as of this moment for February?
So far, nothing. We'll do that public hearing for this text amendment and then our annual report. And we'll work some more on parking and get that together.
Okay, all right.
And I don't, the deadline is Monday.
Nothing's anticipated, anything in the wind? Seems like they all came in for December and January, which is fine. We got through all that.
The deadline's the 13th, and I don't think so. I haven't really,
Okay, so we've got a while because okay.
the 13th, I really don't think we'll have anything.
Okay, well, if we do, that's fine, but this can definitely come on for a public hearing and we'll have additional input from other commissioners. And parking gets bumped right up the list, make sure. I know the city commission is very focused on that, but we just had a lot of citizen business today and we need to take care of that. Other public comments or comments from commissioners or comments for staff or? Everybody wants to see the tail end of that game. Score update before we leave. If so, Matt, then if there's nothing further, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Burzak. Do I have support for a motion? Mr. Yerrick supports the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you all. Happy New Year. Go Bulldogs.
20 to 10.
Notre Dame.